Rodgers on the move. End zone for Adams. He's got it. Touchdown.
They're going to have a defensive end out there.
3rd and 1. Rodgers under pressure again and just has to flip it, and it is going to be gone.
Jones has 98 of them. Play fake here, though. Rodgers going for it all, looking to break it open. He's got it. Lazard gonna go. Touchdown. They're able to change.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another rendition of the Titletown Lounge podcast. I, of course, am your host, Rhino. You can find me on Twitter at Sports Talk Rhino. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Brandon. You can find him on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. And, of course, the podcast itself you can find on Twitter at Titletown Lounge. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We took a Sunday off to observe Father's Day. I hope all of you had a wonderful Father's Day out there to those of you who are dads. And, of course, a wonderful Father's Day to those of you who celebrated with your fathers. Brandon, it's good to be back. Good to be recording. It's that time of year where things are just a tad slow, but that's all right because it's always Packer season in Wisconsin. What's going on, bud?
Oh, it's been a great weekend. I realized that although I'm 31, I feel like I'm 51 after this weekend. Went down to the Deer District on Friday. Realized that I was old down there. Saturday, we had a graduation party. And then today was out at the zoo with the family. It's been a great weekend. The rain stayed away out in Milwaukee. Ready for some Bucks basketball tonight and ready to talk some Packers because it's that time of year. We're getting close. Little under a month until training camp, so it's going to be a good time.
Are you going to be on the injured reserve after your trip to the zoo today?
Yeah. So if my mom's watching and my sister and my girlfriend, I did roll an ankle at the zoo and I felt like Kyrie Irving for a minute. My ankle touched the ground and it was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty bad. Like I have weak ankle. I don't know what it is. Like growing up, I would just walk and like my ankle would roll. So
I probably sprained my ankle I'd have to say at least half a dozen times as a youth. So, and then
I was at a graduation party last night. There was a pool there, and I was racing my girlfriend. And anybody that knows me knows I will never lose, even to my kids. So as I was racing her, I was swimming, and my hand, I didn't realize it because my head was underwater while I was swimming, hit the pool, like the metal pool, like the rim of the pool, and I'm almost positive my knuckle is broken. I can't really bend it, and it's pretty fat. So it's Jesus, dude. I'm definitely going on the IR after today. That's for sure.
We're gonna have to put you in like a plastic bubble, bro.
Yeah. It's gonna be one of those Sunday evenings, and can't really relax because for those that know me and know Rhino, and we got our Bucks in a big game tonight, so it's gonna be a fun night.
Quick shout out before we are joined by our guest for the evening. Quick shout out to your other podcast as well. Make sure you tune in. Anyone who's watching the show right now, tune into the Brew City Lounge after the game. He is one of the only post-game shows in the state of Wisconsin for your Milwaukee Bucks. So hopefully he is bringing us some good news this evening. Hopefully we have a positive post-game show to watch. What are your predictions, man?
I'm a sore loser. If they lose, I don't do a post-game show. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't want to. I don't know. Bucks in 5. Let's just go with that.
So just for public record, just so this is out there, I am currently 2-0 when making a bold prediction, and the scores have actually been relatively close to what
that Nets one was really close.
Yeah, I was within about 2 points for both teams.
Yep.
So I'm going to put the official stamp on this prediction right now. I am going 109.94 Bucks.
I can see that.
109.94 Bucks. I think we're going to see a decent game from Giannis. I think Chris Middleton rebounds after that game one. He had a decent game too, but I think we're going to see a monster game out of Middleton. I'm talking about maybe like a 30-10 kind of night out of Middleton. What do you think?
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me with that, and I'm with you. Like I think I could see it. Middleton struggles on the road, so we'll see. It'll be fun.
And we are now bringing in our guest of the evening. We are joined by Andy Herman for Pack a Day Podcast. You can find him on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Andy, what is going on, bud? How you doing?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And no, not much going on other than a big Bucks game 3 tonight.
Absolutely. We are beyond excited. So we're going to jump right into things with you, Andy. I know you got a lot of things going on today. We're going to jump right in, and we're a couple weeks removed from the rest of the supporting cast showing up to Green Bay with OTAs and whatnot. The biggest story out of Green Bay right now, outside of the Aaron Rodgers situation, obviously, is Davante Adams' contract situation, the extension talks, what is going on with him. He is entering the 2021 season as on the last year of his contract, and he will be an unrestricted free agent going into next year. And I want to ask you, this is the big question so far. I want to ask you, are there any factors as to why either he wouldn't sign or the Packers wouldn't re-sign him?
Yeah, I think both, right? So I think, first of all, from a Davante Adams standpoint, you probably want to know what direction the franchise is heading in both now and into the future, right? So if Rodgers does in fact leave, does Green Bay get a different quarterback in return? Are they running with Jordan Love? Is it some sort of rebuild? We already know that Green Bay has a lot of salary cap nuances coming up over the course of the next couple of years because they, wanted to rebuild this team this year and kind of try to make that Super Bowl run with Aaron Rodgers. Whether that'll happen or not remains to be seen. So I think from Davante Adams' standpoint, not only do you want to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers, but you want to see what direction the team takes both now and going into next year. And obviously, I'm sure, money, length of contract, signing bonus, things like that go into that as well. And then from a Packers standpoint, I think it's the exact same thing, but looking at it in the reverse, right? So if all of a sudden you realize that Aaron Rodgers is not in fact coming back and you need to make a hard pivot towards either Jordan Love or either a soft or a hard rebuild in some capacity, you have to decide, is a almost 30-year-old Davante Adams on a massive deal the best way to open up that next window? And if it's not, then what are your options? You don't probably just want to let him walk in free agency next year. So then that becomes a much more complicated scenario. And you can argue, and listen, I'm going to say this with making sure everyone understands, Davante Adams is probably going to end up on my Mount Rushmore of favorite Packers of all time, period, end of story. Like, he's that fun. He's that amazing, both on and off the field. So there's nobody that thinks more of Davante Adams. But I also think if you realize that you are making a hard pivot into a rebuilding sort of mode, there's no better time to get the most out of Davante Adams in a trade than you would right now. I don't think that will happen. That's pure whatever. But I think both sides want to see exactly what direction this entire Aaron Rodgers situation ends up in and what the franchise needs to do right after that to see how they're going to build this team both now and into the future.
Brad, go ahead and jump in there.
I think, and I agree. First off, Andy, thank you so much for jumping on the Titletown Lounge. I appreciate it. Shout out to you as well for that Brewers hat, because they did just sweep the Colorado Rockies. We're having a heck of a weekend out here in Milwaukee, back to 100% capacity at American Family Field, and the Bucks are obviously making their run. So I love to see that hat, Andy. But when you're talking about a guy like Davante Adams, and I understand the age comes into play with it. I think even with what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, and people will talk about his production is because of Aaron Rodgers or because he plays with a quarterback at the level of Aaron Rodgers, but his numbers are actually just as good when he played with Brett Hundley. I believe it was in the 2017 season when Rodgers went out. So it sounds, the way that Davante Adams is talking, he sounds very confident. He says he'll be here. He's ready to play, obviously, either way. It just sounds like a guy that, and I know these things kind of tend to work themselves out. It just sounds like a guy to me that's just not planning on going anywhere. He also kind of dropped a little bit of a comment about, quote, when Aaron Rodgers comes back. And I don't know if there's something to look into that or not. And I, as a Packer fan, kind of tickles your heart a little bit to see when that came about. I'm with Andy. Give him whatever he wants. He's going to be one of the best Packers to ever put on the uniform. Obviously, what he does on the field speaks for itself. He's finally, although he won't care about it, he'll say he doesn't care, and he probably does, and he's starting to finally get that recognition that he should be getting for his production on the field. But I'm excited to see what he brings. I know having those other receivers around him, the younger receivers, they look up to him. He's kind of taken over. I don't want to say he's, in the driver Jordy Nelson role, but kind of that veteran leadership, that veteran player on the team. I think he's a key part to this team.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And here's the thing. what you always want to look at when you're signing someone to a 4-year, $100 million deal, whatever it's going to end up being, you have to ask yourself, not only are they a fantastic player, but do they elevate the players around them, right? So Aaron Rodgers, obviously you give a massive contract to. Not only is Aaron Rodgers a great quarterback, but he makes everyone else on offense better around him. David Bakhtiari, not only does he anchor the left side of that offensive line, but because he's doing so, he makes Aaron Rodgers better, which makes Davante Adams better. He run blocks for Aaron Jones. He makes everyone around him better. Jair Alexander, right? The better the pass coverage is, he's going to get a massive deal, obviously, eventually. That makes the pass rush better, right? Like, he's going to make players around him better. Now, maybe not the corner opposite Jair Alexander. It's making his life a whole heck of a lot harder because nobody's ever throwing at Jair Alexander, but you get the point. But Davante Adams, the exact same thing, right? If you're signing someone to that deal, not only is he great at what he does, but because he's amazing, it makes the receiver on the other side of the field's job easier. It makes Robert Tonyan have so much more space underneath. It like them not being able to go 8 or 9 man boxes because Davante's out there makes things exponentially easier for Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. The fact that teams have to roll coverage to Davante means they can't disguise things as well, which makes things easier for Aaron Rodgers. And of course, just having an alpha like Davante Adams makes things easier for Aaron Rodgers. So Davante Adams meets that criteria for not only being fantastic at what he does, but elevating the play of the players around him. And regardless of whether that's Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Kurt Benkert, whoever the case may be, he's going to make the players around him better, which becomes arguably exponentially more important if Aaron Rodgers isn't in fact there.
Now, in terms of the franchise, Andy, on their side of the negotiations and what they want to do going into the future, they obviously retained David Bakhtiari. They've retained Aaron Jones for at least the next couple of years. Kenny Clark, one of those core pieces as well. Is there any motivation for Green Bay to try and keep Davante Adams regardless of what Aaron Rodgers does? I mean, if they believe Jordan Love is going to be the guy of the future, is there any motivation for the franchise there to try and sign him regardless?
Yeah, 1,000%. Right. So here's how my mind works. And I'm not everybody, and I'm certainly not a GM or whatever. But when I talked about earlier, and again, it was in the reference of, again, he's amazing and I would love him to be a Packer forever. I'm always looking at when is the window open for you to win a Super Bowl. And that's why, even though I liked Jordan Love, the player, mostly coming out of college, I struggled with the pick because Jordan Love certainly doesn't help Aaron Rodgers' window, and Aaron Rodgers doesn't help Jordan Love's window. Those two coexisting together are, in a way, fighting against each other, which, of course, now we're seeing even exponentially more. But I'm always looking at how do you open up that championship window? And I think, to an extent, it's something that the Packers, in a way, have failed at over the course of the last 3 decades of not making maybe more of a run to try to – I know that go all in is sort of the cliche sort of phrase. And I think it's a little bit overdone, but opening up more windows where, yes, maybe in a couple of years, we're not going to be quite as good, but we really have a strong team around us now. And you look back at, whether it be 2014 or the 4th and 26 or all those plays, if you've got maybe the Giants NFC Championship game lost in the cold, not to bring up a ton of horrible topics here, but, if you have a couple more players in those situations, are you able to potentially have more than 2 championships at this point? So what I'm looking at is if Aaron Rodgers is gone, when is that next championship window, right? I think we can safely say it's probably not this year. It's probably not next year. It probably takes a couple years for the Jordan Love era to kick off and get going. And then at that point, if Davante Adams is in the high end of his deal, so now he's making 35 million per year, plus he's 31 years of age, is that the best use of value to help open that window 3 years down the road when we already know the Packers have taken a bunch of money from those future caps to try to pay for a team right now? So that's where my mind goes is if Aaron Rodgers is gone, is it helping Jordan Love's window to win a championship? And if it's not, if the answer is no, and Jordan Love's your quarterback, then that's where my mind immediately goes to, all right, then let's see if we can get 2 first-round picks for him in exchange and get 2 people in who are going to open up that next window 2-3 years down the line, who could be super talented, could be super cheap, and that's exactly what Green Bay needs 2-3 years from now. But all of that being said, as we just talked about, Davante Adams increases everyone's value on that offense. He makes everyone around him better. And if you ask Jordan Love, hey, we want to open up a window for, the first thing he's going to say is, well, I hope it like heck Davante Adams is there doing it too. He's certainly going to want him there. So these are all super complex, little one domino affects the other sort of thing. And again, I think you can go in either different way, but one of the things that myself and I think others can lose sometimes is this isn't always fantasy football. There are personal relationships that are at work there. You want to make, Aaron Rodgers is apparently upset right now because the Packers don't do a great job of handling the people in the building that help get them there. So now, Davante Adams is due a new contract and you're going to ship him out for draft picks instead. The optics on that aren't great either, right? So Aaron Rodgers, your franchise quarterback, your legendary quarterback, just again, in this scenario, just left town because he didn't think the Packers did a great job of handling the great people that were in the organization, and your immediate move after is to trade Davante Adams. What are now people that are coming into the organization? Well, just another example of that too. So there are layers upon layers upon layers that go into this. And at the end of the day, you always want great players on your roster. And again, certainly Davante Adams is one of those.
Brandon, you can jump in.
Yeah, I think, Andy, a couple things I want to ask you about. I really don't want to dive into the Aaron Rodgers stuff. To be honest, and I know you're probably sick of it. Rhino and I are sick of it. Is it possible that we might see maybe an extension? If we are to see one with Rodgers, do you think we're going to see one that matches up with where Davante Adams goes?
Yeah, I think that's possible. And I think right now, if you're Green Bay, in a way, you just have to you're separating everything from Aaron Rodgers right now. Like, you're trying to do everything you can probably to make that relationship work and figure out how you can get him back and get him in a situation where he can have success here in Green Bay. So I think that's 1A over everything right now. And then once Rodgers is hopefully taken care of and he's back and they figure out the contract and whatever that may entail, then it's okay. Now can we talk to Davante and say, hey, we've got Aaron figured out. We've got the money that you want. Can we hammer this home now? So I think the two are on parallel roads, but not necessarily intersecting.
Andy, from what you know about Davante Adams and your experience with the team so far, is there any chance that Davante might just be saying the proper public relations things, and he may be planning on leaving next year to team up with Aaron Rodgers elsewhere? Or do you believe what he is saying when he says, I don't plan on going anywhere?
Yeah, I tend to believe him. You always take somewhat of a grain of salt with those sort of comments, but Davante's not one to shy away from, honestly, if he felt like I'm just going to see what happens, I feel like he would say, I'm going to see what happens, and whatever cards are played. I really, truly believe that. I don't think he would say, I'm done after this year and I'm going to go to another team. But I don't think he would. I think he would more leave it open-ended and just say, I'm not ready to think about a contract at this point. I'm just ready to play this season, go out and win football games, and we'll handle that down the road, or something more cliche and whatever from there. But I think the fact that he went out of his way to say, hey, I don't think I'm going anywhere, whatever the case may be, to me, he's not the type of player that's going to sugarcoat stuff like that. Now, again, does that mean there's pen to paper and he's going to for sure be a Packer for life? Certainly not. There's a lot of bends in that river still, but I don't think he would sugarcoat it.
Now, realistically speaking, we've got the top 5 highest paid wide receivers right now. Your D-Hop, Julio, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Michael Thomas. They're all above $20 million a year. Realistically speaking, where do you see his annual figure at?
Yeah, I think somewhere around the 4-year, $100 million. I know Zach Kruse and a couple of those guys were throwing around some numbers. I think that sounds around right. Maybe it's a little bit more. Who knows? It's always tough to figure out, especially with where the cap has kind of been fluctuating and things like that. But I think that sounds about right. So yeah, my guess is somewhere around there. But again, those things are always tough to kind of predict with a high level of accuracy.
Brandon?
Yeah, and when you're looking at his age, Andy, I mean, is there concerns with that 4-year deal? Now he's going into his age 29 season with the upcoming football season. Is there any concern for you? I mean, I would say no, because I love Davante and I'm a homer and I don't care what anybody else says. But do you think going into age 29 season with a 4-year deal is maybe pushing it a little bit, or are you okay with that age and that number?
I'm mostly okay with that age and number. I mean, here's the thing. There's a lot of GMs I know, not that I know personally, but I've heard talk about this, where they rarely believe that you're a great wide receiver away from a Super Bowl. That's a nice to have. that's not one of the core building blocks of building a Super Bowl team. So having that much money invested into a wide receiver towards that age, I think there are some GMs in the league that would definitely be like, we're going to pass on that. And we're going to see what we can get in return instead of going in that direction, because we just don't feel like that's one of the key building blocks of a Super Bowl team. But now I lost my train of thought on what the original question was. I'm sorry.
He's going into age 29 season in a 4-year deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say in regards to that is, how does Davante Adams win? Right. So Davante Adams doesn't win with speed. So if you're looking at a player, or like just with pure like Julio Jones, ridiculous athleticism, if you're looking at a player like that that's going into his 30s, at some point you can't win like that anymore. The younger players are going to be faster. The younger players are going to be bigger. The younger players are going to be stronger. That makes it that much tougher. Davante Adams is a savant at wide receiver. He is. There is nobody like him. There's nobody that can do what he does. When everyone thinks that he's going to do A, he does B. You can't get a hand on him at the line of scrimmage. Now, yes, some of that is foot quickness and some of that is unequivocally athletic ability. So there are things that could maybe slow down a hair and things like that. But at the end of the day, Davante Adams knows how to get open, period, like end of story. And if he goes from a 4.45 to a 4.55, does it, remove some of that, yards after the catch? Does it remove maybe some of the explosive plays down the field where now corners have, maybe a tick more to catch up to him down the field and maybe break up a pass? Yes, there is some of that, but it's tough for me to envision a situation in that contract where he's at least not a good to really good receiver. So I don't think you're ever going to end up with a situation where you're just like, well, we've got this albatross of a contract and he can't even do anything out there, right? And even in a worst case scenario, he's one of those insanely amazing locker room people that again is going to help your wide receivers that are in that room. So there's a lot of good reasons to do that deal if you're Green Bay.
And you kind of heard a few of the younger receivers talk about the OTAs and minicamp and referring to Davante as almost like a player / coach, which is kind of what you want to see it out of your guy that's going to eventually get paid. And look, in my opinion, the best receiver in football. I think his numbers will say that he is. There's arguments to go either way, but it's encouraging to see. I think that the Packers are for the future, at least for the foreseeable future, got some promise at that position. Agreed.
It's a good group.
Last question about Davante Adams before we move on to our next subject. So let's say, just as a scenario, Aaron Rodgers comes back for the 2021 season, and there's no real length of how long he's staying. Let's just say he's back for this year, and we don't know what after that. When should we become concerned as to a deal being done with Davante? Like how far into the season will we get before it starts to become an issue or concern?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the franchise tag, right? So in a worst case scenario, you always the Packers will have that at their disposal that they can kind of use to extend things and make it so that Davante can't leave and then work towards a contract from there. So I don't know. It's tough to say when it could potentially become an issue. Davante seems like he's ready to play this season, and again, if he does need to let the cards lie as they happen into the future, I don't think Davante is super concerned with his, like how big, like he knows he's getting paid, right? Like even if he would suffer an injury, which of course nobody's hoping for, yes, it would sting. And I think you have to look at David Bakhtiari as a reason why, if you're the player, you want to get that deal done, right? Because yeah, David Bakhtiari would have still gotten paid this offseason had he tore his ACL and then went to free agency. But I guarantee you he got paid a lot more by signing it prior to suffering his torn ACL. So as a player, you want to protect yourself. So I think there's benefits to both sides for getting it done sooner rather than later, but I also don't necessarily know that there's a panic point either.
Okay. Fair enough. Moving on to our next topic, there was in social media post, I believe it was Instagram and Twitter a couple of days ago, saying, listing the coaches that are on the hot seat for the 2021 season. And LaFleur was mentioned as one of the coaches that are perceivably on this hot seat. I thought it was absolute trash. What are your thoughts on this particular thing that was written?
Yeah, can you send me it to make sure that I block and unfollow whoever it is that wrote the
I think it was Jason La Canorfa.
It was. Yeah. It was.
La Canfora?
Canfora, yes.
So first of all, that of all the stuff that's been put out this offseason, and I've seen some really dumb stuff, that is the single dumbest thing that I've ever. This is a head coach who has literally not lost 2 games in a row yet, period. Like, end of story. Like, this is not, and listen, there were people that were saying that no coach can come in and fix Aaron Rodgers, or no coach can get it, on the same page with Aaron Rodgers and he's uncontrollable and whatever. You can't say that going into it and have that be the national narrative going into it. And then 2 years later say, oh, he's only winning because of Aaron Rodgers. That was literally the exact opposite narrative coming in. Oh, there's no way this 30-something head coach is going to be able to come in and jump. He did. And he did it successfully, and he raised Aaron Rodgers' level of play, and he got him 5 to 10 insanely open throws, in any single given game. The scheme was fantastic. The scheme was phenomenal. And literally, now, there's a couple things that are, I don't know if they're red flags, but you can point to, all right, so you had the West Coast trips 2 years ago where they got destroyed by San Francisco, destroyed by the Chargers. They go back to the NFC Championship game. Did they lose? Did they learn their lesson? No, the exact same thing happened over again. They lost 3, West Coast road games and didn't learn any lessons from the first 2, and they got destroyed in the national, in the championship game, in the NFC Championship game. So that, you want to see them, sort of learn from those mistakes. They didn't. The Tampa Bay game, you had an NFC Championship game at home. To me, there was a lot of issues at play there. And if anyone is literally pointing to the one decision of, kicking the field goal instead of going for a touchdown, again, I've broke it down in insane detail. You're one Kevin King breakup away at the end of the game. Now, Kevin King breakups are not exactly the most common thing in the world, but you're one play away at that point from being down for Aaron Rodgers with the ball around his own 20-yard line, minute and a half left in a timeout, to go down and win the NFC Championship game. I would personally at the time, and even in hindsight, I still would have gone for it and given my team a chance at a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. But the Packers defense had held up until that point in the second half, got some turnovers. They were able to get Brady off the field a couple times. They kick the field goal. They get one more stop. They were 1 third down stop away from getting Rodgers the ball back. As much as I maybe didn't like the call, I can absolutely understand what he was seeing in hindsight. And from an analytical standpoint, how he was seeing it, that was the only scenario where it gave them a chance to win in regulation. And you can argue that it actually gave them more chances to win than going for it and trying to go for a 2-point conversion. So, and then obviously having Tampa get the ball, tie game with the ball in his hands, there's no guarantee you see overtime in that situation either. So there's nothing that I can point to that in the last 2 years in any way, shape, or form that says he is anything but a phenomenal head coach. I'm talking top 5 head coach. And to me, of all the Rodgers stuff that's happened this offseason, if they were to fire Matt LaFleur, that would be dumber and more egregious than anything this franchise has done in the last 10 years. So I don't care if they go, I don't care if Rodgers is the quarterback and they go 2-15 this season. I'm still sticking with LaFleur for a few more just to see how it plays out after that. So no. Dumb article, dumb take on their end.
That was actually my next. Oh, I'm sorry, Brandon. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
My next question was actually going to be: let's say Rodgers is gone this season. Let's say he does not come back to Green Bay. Does he have a short leash with Jordan Love as his quarterback?
So I just want to clarify: are you saying does Matt LaFleur have a short leash with Jordan Love, meaning he would
in terms of his job? Does his job have a short leash with Jordan Love as his quarterback?
No, Brian Gutekunst is the one that's on trial after this, right? It's not Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur showed he can be successful in this league when you put the pieces around him, in my opinion. Like, to me, this is much more a trial of Brian Gutekunst. Now, I said it about Ted Thompson at the time, and I'll say it again about Brian Gutekunst. I love the fact that a GM had the conviction on a player enough that he knew he was going to take the sword, that half of the fan base, if not more, was going to hate him for that pick. He knew that his job would be on the line if something like this happened and Jordan Love didn't succeed. He knows he's not going to probably see the light of day to select another quarterback. And he was still convicted enough on the player that he thought he was that good that he couldn't pass up on the talent of that player at that time. And also trade up to go get him using a 4th-round pick to do so. I love the fact that your GM is that convicted. And listen, there are so many GMs in this league that will at any point in time take the easiest, maybe the easiest is the wrong word, the road that will most likely give them longevity in their careers. And selecting anybody besides Jordan Love in that scenario would have been the safer long-term play for Brian Gutekunst for his job. If Brian Gutekunst was selfish, right? If he was purely selfish and only cared about himself and the longevity of his job, literally the last person he takes in that pick is Jordan Love. The gutsiest, ballsiest, most daring pick that he could make there, and the one that has the most risk tied to it is selecting Jordan Love. And he still looked that in the face and said, I am so convicted on this player that I'm taking him anyway, even though I know that this might be the shortest trip for me out of Green Bay if it doesn't turn out. So would I have done it? Probably not. Does it mean that he's an amazing GM because he did it? We'll find out. But to me, I love the conviction, but Brian Gutekunst will ultimately be much more on trial for this than Matt LaFleur will be, in my opinion.
The Matt LaFleur hot seat question is, or whatever you want to call it, it's just so asinine. One, I don't want to take anything away from Aaron Rodgers, Andy, and I've said this before on a few other shows, and I know, in my opinion, Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback that I've personally ever seen, in my opinion, that's ever played the position. But when you look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers before Matt LaFleur got there, now I know he had the injury season in 2017. 2018, he didn't have a really good year either. 2019 was kind of subpar for Aaron Rodgers as well, but we saw that jump from 26 touchdowns to 48 touchdowns in that final in the last year that we've seen. His system fits the quarterback position better than probably any other position. You're looking at guys like Jared Goff, who have gone to the Super Bowl and had a chance at winning that Super Bowl. Matt Ryan, I know he's won an MVP, but he has really never been the same Matt Ryan since Shanahan and LaFleur were there. It's obviously a system and offense that fits the quarterback well. Obviously, guys like Davante Adams are having career years in this system. Aaron Jones is having a career year in this system. You're going to see, we saw Jamal Williams get paid in the offseason going over to Detroit. You're seeing kind of a lot. It fits. It feels like it fits everybody. You saw Robert Tonyan have, double-digit touchdowns and lead the league in the tight end position. It just feels like, yeah, we know Aaron Rodgers is great. Nobody's taking anything away from him. He's the best, whatever. But it feels like everybody else is also benefiting from it too. And David Bakhtiari has said it. I know when Corey Lindsey was here, they like the offense because there's multiple reads to it. It's quick. They're not blocking for 10 seconds at times. It just seems like he doesn't get enough, in my opinion. Matt LaFleur just does not get enough credit for the system that he's putting in Green Bay.
No, I agree. Like, rhythm is, I think, the best word, the best way to put it. There, for the last 2-3 years under McCarthy, and really even in 2019 when it was the Frankenstein, LaFleur, McCarthy, Rodgers offense, that I think was 1,000,000% the right move by Matt LaFleur, by the way. I think if he came in and tried to choke his system completely down Aaron Rodgers' throat for that first year, I think it would have been a nightmare. I think the fact that he met him halfway, asked him what he wanted to run, took away, some of the things that he really liked from Mike McCarthy's system and kept it in for a season. But what we saw this past year and the difference between 2019 and 2020 on offense was that Rodgers specifically, but everyone on offense, they ran the LaFleur system and they bought into the LaFleur system, and they ran that from day one up until the NFC Championship game with an insanely high level of success. Number one offense, as you mentioned, everyone was involved, and we saw everything had a rhythm and a pace and a purpose to it. Every little play that went this way at one point in the game had a counter to it later in the game that they were able to run off of that. All of the stuff, the jet sweeps that they ran in one game, even though they didn't run it in other games, it was still something that teams had to keep in account and keep, working on in practice. Like all of the play action bootlegs where a guy's sitting open in the flat, the insane creativity of the stuff that they ran in the red zone to have the number one red zone offense in all of football. All of that stuff starts at the top of the floor, and certainly give Nathaniel Hackett and Luke Getsy a good chunk of credit for that as well. And Rodgers as well, like all of them, but they were on the same page. And that's why I think why some people are frustrated with the whole Rodgers situation is if they want to say that they haven't supported this guy or given him the weapons or, had the people surrounding him, like this is a offense that they gave him a play caller that brought out the best in Aaron Rodgers and the best of everyone on that offense. And they had plenty of weapons. There was no lack of talent with Aaron Jones and Davante Adams and Robert Tonyan and the rest of that group of weapons. And now it's all coming back, if he's willing to kind of see it through and have another season of it. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that went into that entire situation, but I think lack of talent is not one that you can necessarily peg on, at least currently with this current regime. Brian Gutekunst has done a lot of things. Like he brought in Jimmy Graham. It didn't necessarily work out, but he brought in Mercedes Lewis. He tried things like bringing in a Tavon Austin. They brought in AJ Dillon at right. Like he's done a lot of things for this offense to try to get at the pieces that it needed to work. And last year we saw it kind of all gel together all at once.
Andy, that is phenomenal stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you have to run. We greatly appreciate your time that you have given us today. Quick question before you take off. What's your prediction for tonight?
The famous saying is Bucks in 6. I'm gonna say Bucks by 6 tonight. Bucks by 6.
I like that one.
6.
I like that one.
Okay. I'll say Bucks by 6 tonight. I think the really fun thing of this Hawks Bucks matchup is I think we're going to see a lot of punches and counter punches. So we saw Atlanta run what they wanted to run game 1. I think Milwaukee had nothing left after that Brooklyn series where they both just were, both Brooklyn and Milwaukee sold their soul in that series to try to get to the next series. And I think we saw that at the end of game 1 where Milwaukee just ran out of gas and didn't necessarily have it left. I think not only winning in game 2 at home, but winning big, resting your starters in the fourth quarter, I think that goes a long way now into Milwaukee getting their legs back and having some fun and things like that. So I think Milwaukee got things figured out, but we saw how Milwaukee defended Trae Young in game 2. And I think now in game 3, Atlanta's going to have a counter punch to what Milwaukee did in that game. And then, we know that Bud's not necessarily in-game adjustment guy always. So it's going to see, does he have an in-game adjustment to what Atlanta's trying to do, or can they overcome, or is Atlanta's plan just not good enough? But I think it's going to go back and forth for a little bit, and while these teams figure each other out, and I think that's what's going to make it a really entertaining series. Or Bucks just run away with it, and we can actually have some fun and see probably some Bucks in the finals. If
you were worried about Packers Twitter, Andy, being miserable, welcome to Bucks Twitter now. So
I'm happy to see that Brewers Twitter, Bucks Twitter, Packers Twitter, all a degree of difference, and and struggling with coping mechanisms at times.
It's kind of like that meme with all the hands shaking, and then it's just Wisconsin sports misery, pretty much. It's Andy, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate your time, bud. You have a great Sunday, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks. Thanks, guys.
Yep. That was Andy Herman of the Pack a Day podcast. You can find Andy on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Always great stuff from Andy. Love having him on and interacting with him on Twitter. I don't think there's any goddamn way that Matt LaFleur is on the hot seat. I mean, what a crock of shit that was.
At this point,
when I saw that, I was like, who the hell wrote this? I mean, that's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard.
And of course, it's a writer based out of Washington, because that's where they are predicting, or a few of them are talking about Aaron Rodgers possibly going. I don't know how legit this is. It's at NFL Talk. They got like 4,000 followers. I don't know if it's legit. That says the Packers have continued to stay in contact with quarterback Aaron Rodgers and his agent. Both sides are looking to get this resolved and hope it will have it worked out before training camp. I don't know if it's legit or not, but
we've got the July 2nd deadline.
Yeah, it just
for him to opt out. Yeah, so he's got until July 2nd to opt out. I can't remember what the details were. I just know July 2nd is a very important day, and what is that? That's Friday, isn't it?
That's the day. Yeah, and that's the one where he can either withhold out of the season, but he can't come back. You can't. He can't change his mind. So. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how legit that Twitter handle is, but that just popped up while we were talking to Andy just 10 minutes ago. So
I'm gonna have to dig into that one a little bit more once we get done with the show and see if there's any validity to that, because I've seen some other accounts tweet out how they had contract extension talks like 2-3 weeks ago. I never really found much more to it than that. But yeah, great stuff from Andy. We're gonna move on to our next subject, Lambeau, 100%. Going to have all nearly 90,000 screaming cheeseheads in the stadium for week 1, or week 2 rather. I think this is big news. This is huge for the Packers. We really saw how flat the stadium was at times last year. I mean, obviously the Packers didn't struggle on offense a whole lot. There was a couple games, the one against Jacksonville and Minnesota in particular. Those were some really flat games offensively. They won the Jacksonville game. They lost the Minnesota game. I do sincerely believe that if there are fans in the stands for those games are completely different outcomes, including the Minnesota game. I think they're able to win that Minnesota game with fans in the stands.
Yeah, I agree.
How big of an impact is this going to have on the team in 2021?
Well, real quick, and I'm going to get your question. I know that we're planning on going to a Packer game, and I was with
Pittsburgh.
About that game. I just found this out from Frank Winters, part of the Ty Dunn Go On. They are actually celebrating the 96 Super Bowl team that weekend, weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the 25th anniversary. Yep. Yeah.
I didn't know that. So he said, him and a dozen other of the guys will be in Green Bay. But I agree with you. Like, obviously, we've seen it with basketball and baseball, the difference between having a crowd and not having a crowd. And look, you could make an argument, Rhino, for any sport that fans are the most important. People will say it's basketball. People could say it's baseball. I don't know if there's a bigger sport in which the home crowd plays a part in. Now, it's a physical sport. It's obviously out of the three major sports, it's the only one that has any kind of physicality to it, especially the NBA doesn't. So it's huge. Like, it's absolutely huge. And I think having those, Rhino, we can make an argument the NFC Championship game would have been a little bit different.
100%.
What did they have? 7,500 fans? And it was like,
it was 6,000 like public, like open public, and then they had like either 1,000 first responders for COVID and shit like that. I don't know, something like that.
You're talking like having 80 there for an NFC Championship game, and honestly, you could be talking about a different outcome. Now, I know the fans don't play on the field, and they don't impact the game on a scoreboard.
You can't tell me they don't.
But I believe they. Yeah, I'm with you. I believe they do. Like, I think. Tom Brady throws another interception. That puts a little bit more juice into that, that stadium and amps up the players a little bit. And Andy's right. Like that game was kind of, we could go back and nitpick that end of that game, and we're not talking about that game, but there's a lot of things. Yeah. I think fans they're going to be huge, and it's encouraging to see sports kind of making its quote unquote comeback.
Yep. I agree 100%. The thing that when it comes to the fans, and their impact on the field, there's literally a name for different fan bases. I mean, you have the black hole in Vegas. You have the 12 in Seattle. I mean, you want to tell me that fans don't impact the game? The fans in Seattle literally set off seismographs in Seattle when Marshawn Lynch had that beast mode run against the New Orleans Saints in the 2010 playoffs. So fans make a huge impact, and especially in Green Bay when you have such a passionate fan base. The one thing that I always point out to people when I talk about the fans in Green Bay, I think Green Bay has one of the more intelligent fan bases out of any sport. If you watch the game and if you pay attention to the crowd during the game, when the Packers are on offense, you can hear a pin drop in that stadium. You can hear a pin, and that's 90,000 people, and you can hear a pin drop. When they're on defense, that stadium, if it had a roof, the roof would be gone when that team is on defense. So they definitely impact the game. I think having 90,000 screaming, half-drunk Packer backers in the crowd come week 2 will be a huge turn of events. Now, I guess the question that I want to follow up to this with, what kind of reception do you see happening for Jordan Love if he's under center week 2 for the first home game?
To be honest with you, I think the tide's starting to turn against Rodgers. Now, don't get me wrong. If he shows up in training camp in week 1, everybody's going to be in love with it. But no pun intended. But I honestly, though, Rhino, you can kind of sense it. Like, Packer fans are sick of it. Like, they're sick and tired of we did this crap, 16 years ago, whatever it was. Like, we've done this. Like, enough is enough. Like, play or not. Like. And you heard a couple players from a couple sources that we have are kind of on the same boat. Like, what are we doing here? Like, are we trying to win a Super Bowl, or are we trying to play tug of war with a franchise that isn't going anywhere, that's been around since the early 1900s? Like, what exactly are we doing here? So I think, honestly, in the event that Rodgers does not come back and he either opts out for the 2021 season and Love is under center, or he gets traded, Aaron Rodgers, that is, I think you're going to see the fans take on Jordan Love with open arms. I really think you're going to, because what I think Rodgers is doing right now is what a lot of people thought Rodgers was. Drama, kind of about himself. And I know there's people that I know personally that have that feeling towards him even before all of this. So, now this is obviously this situation has amplified those feelings towards him. So I think if Jordan Love is under center, you're going to see a fan base gather around him. And more importantly, Rhino, and we've seen it, I think you're going to see the players take on Jordan Love just as much as maybe even more so than Rodgers, because if you haven't heard, maybe you have, Aaron Jones him and Aaron Jones worked out every day after minicamp and OTAs during the season last year. And then this offseason, obviously, they were working out together. So I think you're going to see a fan base and the team gather around him more so than we have in the past.
And I've seen a lot of comparisons on social media to, the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers situation and how nobody's going to like Jordan Love. And I remind every single time I see this, I remind the people, you remember week 1 against the Vikings in 2008, Sunday Night Football? The stadium was roaring. Not one person booed Aaron Rodgers. And when he threw that first touchdown pass, which is still one of the best passes of his entire career. Yeah. He's in midair and throwing directly across his body, and it was in a window about the size of a football. That stadium lost its mind. Mm-hmm. And even if it was just for a split second, everyone forgot that Brett Favre even existed. And they were all in on this guy. And then throughout the season, you could see everyone start to come around. I could guarantee you one thing, unless Jordan Love is pure trash next year or this year, if he's a starter, unless he's pure trash, the exact same thing is going to happen. Jordan Love starting week 2, the first home game of the year. He's going to get a roar of applause. He's going to get cheers. And when he throws that first touchdown pass, people are going to lose their mind. So I don't see a negative reception for Jordan Love either. Honestly, I think it's going to be a huge sigh of relief no matter what the outcome is. Obviously, there's going to be people who are going to be upset that Rodgers is gone. Always. But there's going to be that underlying tone of, okay, the shit's over. Let's get down to business. Let's have a football season. And you're sprinkling on top of the fact that it's 100% capacity. People are just going to be happy about the fact that they get to go back to Lambeau and watch football. So I think you're going to see a very positive reception for Jordan Love this year if he is under center, which I'm still holding out that sliver of hope that he's not going to.
But you got to shout out to Noah. I love the guy. He says, "Damn it, I wish I could send pics on the chat so I could show you some of the pics of the quote intelligent end quote fans. Minus 10 degrees, no shirts about to die." He's not wrong, but I mean, it's not the most intelligent thing, but that's what separates our fan base from others and kind of news around the NFC North. And I know we didn't plan on talking about this, but it's a possibility that the Green Bay Packers are going to be the only team in the NFC North to have an outside stadium, which is crazy.
Quick story about that shirtless thing. I went to Mike McCarthy's last game, and it was unbearable weather. It started out with freezing rain, and then it turned into an all-out blizzard. In about 5 rows in front of me, she had to have been 5'0", about 105 pounds. And there she is in shorts and one of those cheese bras. Oh, God. And that was it, dude. And I'm like, I don't know how you aren't frozen solid. Meanwhile, I'm in Carhartt coveralls and like 3 Carhartt hoodies. And all I'm thinking about is wanting to do a fireball shot just so I can either numb the pain or just forget about it being cold completely.
I'm glad. I'm glad we're going to a September game.
I've only been to 2 December games in my life. That was one of them. It was absolutely miserable. The other one, it was the game that they played against the Bucks in 2017 when Aaron Rodgers was out.
Yep.
Aaron Jones had the game-winning touchdown in overtime.
Yep.
It was 54 degrees at kickoff. Yeah. And it was like December 20th. I
remember that game.
Something like that.
Overtime. Yeah.
I always go to home openers or games in September, October because I absolutely hate being outside when it's cold. I work out in the crap, so no thanks.
Yeah, the coldest game I ever went to, real quick. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It was -4. It was the last game of the regular season.
2008.
It was 2010. It was the Super Bowl year.
Oh, the game against the Bears.
They had to win. Like, so much was going on that game. They had to beat the Bears. The Giants had to beat the Eagles had to beat the Giants. There's like so many moving pieces to that game, and the crowd went nuts. Obviously, when the Packers won, it was an ugly game. It was a boring game, 10-3.
They ended that game on a interception.
They ended it on an interception, and then Deshaun Jackson at like the same time. The games start pretty close to each other. Deshaun, all the Giants had to do was kick it out of bounds. I don't know, whatever they did.
Punt back.
He ran the punt back, and the crowd just went nuts. And then the players actually came back out on the field and were celebrating with the fans. So it was like -4. It was pretty cold.
No thanks. I have no intention of ever going to it. I'd rather be on my couch or at a nice warm bar enjoying some $2 beers instead of 11. But speaking of games and memories, let's finish up the show with some of our favorite Packers memories. It can be either in person or something that you watched on TV. I'll actually do one of each. So I'll do my favorite Packer memory that I watched on TV and my favorite Packer memory in person. I'll start with the TV one. My absolute favorite memory of all time that I watched on TV. 2013, when the first time Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone. I was living in Wisconsin. I had just moved to Wisconsin. I'm from Illinois originally. I just moved to Wisconsin, and my dad still lived in Rockford at the time. I went back down to visit my dad. I did this a couple times a year. I'd go watch games with him and then, go home. And so I'm in Illinois. I'm surrounded by Bears fans. I mean, there's probably 3 other Packers fans at the bar outside of me, my dad, and my ex-wife. And, it was just a real shit show of a game. It was Aaron Rodgers' first game back since breaking his collarbone. He had thrown a couple of picks. There was that really weird play with what was his name? Jarrett Boykin, where it was the fumble. It looked like a forward pass at first. And it was the fumble, and he picked it up.
I remember that
for a touchdown.
Yep.
And I just remember that last drive, they had to convert a couple of 4th downs, and every time, like, the whole bar is going nuts, and then Aaron Rodgers would convert a 4th down play, and everyone would get quiet. And he hit Randall Cobb with that pass to take the lead, that touchdown pass to take the lead over Chris Connie, who I can't even believe was a professional DB. And I lost my shit. I'm surprised one of these Bears fans didn't put a hit out on me that night, because I was screaming. I'm running laps around the bar. I'm just screaming as loud as I possibly could. Hands down, my favorite memory that I've ever watched on TV, just because of the scenario that I was in, just because of that particular scenario.
That's I feel like there's a couple fan bases that have it out for me, but and really any team we're playing that they end up hating me. So like my favorite TV moment, there's so many. There's one that just kind of sticks out, and it's not a game that necessarily. I mean, it did mean a lot. It was the playoff game in 2011. It was the Super Bowl season against Atlanta. Now we had, if you remember, we barely got into the playoffs. Okay, barely got in. We barely beat
the Eagles. Barely
beat Philly. We ended the game on an interception from Tramon Williams. So we were going into Atlanta. Atlanta was the number 1 seed, best offense in football. One of the top, I think they had the top. I think they were in the top 5 in defense. They were just all around, really, really good. And you're kind of like, okay, it is what it is. I had just gotten home from Iraq, and I actually flew home for the game just so I could, be with my mom and my dad in the basement. They have crazy Packer parties. So
a quick shout out to your dad. That dude has one of the baddest man caves I've ever seen in my entire life. I had the privilege of passing out on the couch down there after a Brewers game. So one of the best man caves.
Yeah. So we're watching that game, and I remember Tramon Williams going into halftime with that pick 6. And it kind of look around the room, and you were like, they're up 28-14 going in halftime, and you're looking at we're in Atlanta. It's hard to play in a dome usually, when you're the visiting team. This wasn't supposed to happen. This is special. This could be. And I think at that moment when Tramon Williams took that interception, you kind of felt something click, something happened. You felt the magic carpet take off, because it was, you never look back. And Aaron Rodgers never played really a better game. He was 31 for 35 in that game. They were calling him Houdini on the sidelines because he was evading rushes. And it was one of the games that just kind of stick out in my mind. Now, obviously they went on to win this Super Bowl. And just a side note, about that Super Bowl game too, because obviously that could be a favorite TV moment. But
I mean, that's the obvious favorite.
Just a fun story about the Super Bowl with my grandma, and she's no longer here. with us, but the Packers had won the Super Bowl, and we're all celebrating. We're going nuts. Everybody's hugging, crying. My dad's pouring shots. Like, everybody's just going nuts. And my grandma was walking around the house, and she's like, "Where's my phone? Like, I can't find my phone." And if you know my grandma, and if you're watching, you guys already know, what kind of person she was, and she was awesome. And we couldn't find her phone. Like, dude, we were looking for like an hour. We could not find her phone. So we're calling it. All of a sudden, everybody's like, "Okay, be quiet. We got to call it." Yeah, the Packers have just won the Super Bowl. All of a sudden, the table starts vibrating, and then her Bloody Mary starts lighting up. She threw her phone in the Bloody Mary out of excitement for winning the Super Bowl. So that's like my caveat to that year. It was just, obviously they, being Super Bowl champions. But that game against Atlanta was just something different. And then looking at my favorite in-person game, probably the most recent, like there's a lot of great ones. I mentioned going to the Bears game when they had to win and all that stuff that had to happen. That's a great one. But probably the latest one I went to before COVID, 2019, it was a Monday Night Football game against Detroit. And I had never been like at any sporting event, like never really sat too close. Like, it's expensive, number one, and they're hard to come by. My girlfriend, however magic she works, got into the public relations or whatever the girl was. She did like the on-field pregame and postgame and halftime stuff. She got us on the field to hold the flag for the national anthem. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I love my flag and my country. So being able to be on that field to hold the flag for the national anthem, and then like 10 yards away from Rodgers, we probably know, he probably remembers me. So, being on that field before the game, walking on that field, Rhino, and a full crowd, Monday Night Football, national TV. And I just remember the best part about this was there was no phones allowed. And you kind of sucked when it happened because you're like, oh, I want to get a video, but you couldn't have your phone on the field. But I remember just walking onto that field and looking around, and you're looking around and you're seeing fans going nuts. You're seeing numbers, up in on the wall, in the stadium, Reggie White, Brett Favre, all those guys. And you're watching these guys on the field during warmups, and it's just such a surreal moment. You really can't put it into words, and not having the phone was really one of the best things to happen, because it just, you're able to take it in. Yeah. And we did the flag, and we went back in the tunnel. We eventually got to our seats, and that was the Alan Lazard coming out party, and the Packers ended up coming from behind and winning a game on a last second Mason Crosby field goal.
Yeah, that was a great game. That was when they implemented that really ridiculous, like they would flash the lights in the whole stadium.
Yes,
when they
it's actually,
a touchdown. Is it better in person?
I'm gonna tell you right now, if you have not been to one where they do that, now it gets a lot of flack on TV, and some of the media guys are like, "Oh, okay, whatever." Bro, it's wild when they score a touchdown. Yeah, it's nuts. It has a different feeling. Now, if you're sitting in the press box, you're kind of like, okay, whatever. Yeah. I'm telling you, Rhino, a couple Miller Lights, couple Spotted Cows, and those lights are going. Those lights are flashing after a big touchdown. When Mason Crosby kicked that field goal to win that game, it was nuts, mayhem.
Oh man, that would be awesome.
Though I like it. The fireworks are probably good. I think they should do both. But yeah. That was Matt LaFleur's thing with the lights. So I think it's incredible, and you see the Milwaukee Brewers are doing it now.
Yep. The Brewers are doing it now.
Yeah. So it's fun for the fans. It's different. Like, fireworks.
It is different. It's different than some stupid horn that you blow too.
A horn, or you do a firework, or you're talking about bear down or whatever the hell that means. But I think it's fun. It's different. I like it.
My favorite in-person moment, and it was a good game. It wasn't like something that was crazy. I think it was more of the moment that fueled this, and of course the events that happened a few months previously to that. But I went to the home opener in 2015. It was a Sunday night game against the Seattle Seahawks. And for those of you at home that are following along that may not remember, that was the first game after that terrible NFC Championship game loss. And I had never, this was probably temporary, I had never hated a franchise or a group of fans more in my entire life than that 6-month stretch after that NFC Championship game loss in 2014. I hated these people with a fiery passion that was never going to be defeated at the hands of anybody. So I woke up at like 6 a.m. I'm like, let's go. Like I was so amped for this game. And the one play that I'll never forget for the rest of my entire life, Aaron Rodgers drew one of the defenders offside. So it was a free play, but on a free play, your DBs are still playing. I mean, everyone's still playing on a free play. It's still going to count if it's a touchdown or a completed pass. So everyone is still playing at full speed. And James Jones dusted Richard Sherman across the middle for a touchdown. I want to say it was 30 or 35-yard touchdown pass, and that's ultimately what ended up sealing the game. The Seahawks were never able to get back into contention for the game after that. But out of all of the games I've been to in my entire life, I have never heard the crowd louder than that. It was kind of like that payback feeling. Now, obviously, the meaning of the game wasn't anywhere near what it was for the NFC Championship game, but it was like everyone in the crowd was like, all right, cool. We punched them back in the face. Yeah. We're going to beat the Seahawks. Let's go get absolutely hammered.
They destroyed them.
Dude, oh my God, the crowd. I mean, every single person in that crowd they were up on their feet. They were screaming at the top of their lungs. They were jumping up and down. So by far my favorite memory. I mean, a couple other ones that stick out. Like I saw the Jordy Nelson pass against the Patriots where he dusted Darrelle Revis for that touchdown at halftime. I watched the 21-point comeback against the Jets. I think it was 2000.
That was a Super Bowl year.
No. They beat the Jets Super Bowl year. That was beat them. That was 2014. 2014.
Yeah, it was the same year that Jordy Nelson game that you're talking about.
Yep. So 2014, the home opener was against the Jets. They were down 24-1.
Yeah.
Or 24-1, 24-3 at half, and they came back. The first possession in the second half was like an 88-yard touchdown pass to Jordy Nelson. That's what really kicked things off. And what was that defensive lineman's name? The really good one for the Jets. What the hell was his name?
You're not thinking
he was their first overall pick either that year or the year before.
It wasn't Muhammad Wilkerson at that time.
Yes,
was it?
Yes, it was Muhammad Wilkerson. He got ejected, and the crowd lost their shit too when he got ejected.
I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that. That was another year that could have, should have been.
Oh my God, we don't have enough show to get into the coulda, woulda, shoulda beens because there's about 10 of them that'll come to my mind right now.
Yeah, easily.
So, by the way, just condolences to Juan. He could not be here today. We are going to wrap the show up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It was a great show. Thank you once again to Andy Herman for providing us with a half hour of his time. Always great content from Andy Herman. I, of course, am Rhino. You can find me on Twitter at Sports Talk Rhino. My esteemed colleague, Brandon, my co-host, you can find him on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. And, of course, the Titletown Lounge. You can find us at Titletown Lounge on Twitter. We will get this show chopped up and posted later this evening, and make sure you tune in all week for updates on next week's show. Do we have a guest next week? Any preview into next week?
We're working on it. There's people
working on it.
Yeah,
we're working on it.
we got lots of what ifs. So we'll see. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have somebody. We're waiting on a few things.
Wayne Larrivee, if you're watching, please respond to my DMs, please.
And he does watch. Wayne Larrivee, he is a subscriber. We do.
Well, him and I are friends.
He does. He does. So. He's definitely watching. So yeah, no, thanks for a great show. And God, let's go Bucks. Come on. Let's go.
Yes. I'm actually, the reason why I'm cutting the show off right now is I'm starting to get the pre-game tingly. So
I looked up at my computer and I see it's almost 6 o'clock and the nervous stomach feeling is starting to settle in.
Yep. What did I say? It was 109.94? 109.94.
I won't. Yep. I don't like predicting stuff. I'm too nervous. I'm
3-0. I have to keep the trend going. I'm 3-0. I'm going to come back on the show next week, and I'm 2-0. If I come back on the show next week and I'm 2-1, I'm never doing a prediction again.
It's a possibility we come on the show and they're in the finals, so we'll just leave it at that.
It's true. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.